Hey, and we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. You're watching FYNTV.com. Don't forget, tell your friends. It's that simple, FYNTV.com. We're going from 8 to 11 all the way to Election Day. We're going to try to get all the information we can out for voters. That's our goal here, always at FetcherNews.com, to get the most information for voters that we can. I have now a guest with me, Joene Deplancke. Did I get it right?
Deplancke.
I said Deplancke.
All right.
Did I get it right?
Yes.
Okay. We know each other, by the way. Anyhow, my guest now, what we did yesterday, we started this yesterday. We talked to State Senator Josh McCoon, which we all like the senator, and I am happy that he agreed to come on the show to talk about these amendments. If you're going to vote, now here's what I never ask people not to go vote. Yesterday I sat in Fannin County and I watched so many people voting yesterday in Fannin County. And I was saying to myself a little prayer, I sure hope they understand the constitutional amendment questions in the state of Georgia. We're trying to do that here. Because when you go, I've asked you, if you are passionate about your presidential candidate, whether it's Republican, Democrat, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, no matter what, please don't go vote if you don't have a clear understanding of the constitutional amendments. You are voting to amend your Constitution. Now we'll jump right in here, but obviously if they could do what they wanted to do down under the Gold Dome, they would do it. But obviously what they want to do is currently unconstitutional. That'd be pretty simple, right? So you have to amend the Constitution to fall within it. They're asking you, the voters, to do that. Joene, thank you for coming here. You listened to the interview with Josh McCoon yesterday, and you just have, I'm going to say, a different take that you want to share. Can we take these one at a time? Are you good with that?
Yes. In fact, and I want to skip number one, start with number two. But first, I'd like to say I have the utmost respect for Josh McCoon. I think he's the most valuable conservative senator that we have in the Georgia legislature. And I was so proud of the fact that he was willing to come on your show and discuss, the issues with you. I was somewhat disappointed in his analysis or advice on the 4 Georgia constitutional amendments, though. And I'd like to explain my reasoning, but just in case people don't have time to watch this entire segment, I can summarize it with vote no on all 4 constitutional amendments. The bottom.
Well, let me say this, and then you want to go to number 2, and what I'd like to do is when we get to them and you want to start on them, I'd like to just actually read those briefly for the audience so they do know. But I do want to share with you out there, because I got a phone call yesterday from somebody saying, Josh McCoon is a senator from Columbus, Georgia. He's not our senator. Now our show is nationwide. We actually have people watch it worldwide. So, but in Georgia, they say, well, he's not our senator in Georgia. He is from Muskogee County, Columbus, Georgia. What about our senator? I do want to let you know, as I answered yesterday for anybody questions, State Senator Steve Gooch has been invited. This was a couple weeks ago. I've sent a couple invitations. He was going to look at his schedule and get back to me, and he has not confirmed. So,
well, I'd like to add
that's all I want to put in there. So if anybody knows.
Email to Steve Gooch, our senator, on September 29th. There's a lot of information and about especially Amendment 1, and have still not had a response. And so that's why.
Well, I just want our viewers to know that I am not going outside of our viewing area, because we're in LJ, North Georgia, Fannin County, Dawson County, Lumpkin and White, all the areas. I don't want to have people think that I've gone outside of our viewing area and disregarded what if our senator wanted to have a comment. He's been invited. So that moving on, number 2 is authorizes penalty for sexual exploitation and assessment assessments on adult entertainment to fund child victim services. What say you?
Well, I understand that Senator McCune recommended that we vote yes. However, if you read the full wording of the amendment, that's the thing that's troubling.
This is amendment number 2, folks.
Amendment number 2. What they put on the ballot, they put a one little sentence thing that they spend a lot of time crafting so that it sounds the way they want you to vote. And however, if you read the wording of the amendment, it's like many of the other power grabs, I would call them, in recent years. The wording says the state may spend this money to provide assistance to victims of sexual predators, etc. And if you look back at the many other amendments and laws that are passed in Georgia, the secret to the money grab is the word may, okay? Because if the bill or amendment says the state may do something, it also means they may not do it. And if you look at the things that they've done in the past, like I'll use an example of when you buy your license plates. When you buy a tag, you can pay an extra amount of money for save the whales or the wetlands or spay and neuter your animals. And the last time I checked, in all these years, not one penny that they've collected has ever gone to any of those causes. Every bit of it has gone to the general fund because it says they may send it to those places, all right? And
so you're concerned with the verbiage in number 2 of may go, because that does give them an out to put it in the general fund. That's one of your major concerns there?
Yes, because
maybe not the intent. Maybe your concern is not that, I'm not putting words in you, but you may want to see them do this and help it out if the words were changed. It said must, not may. Has to.
Well, let me...
And I'm not saying you would advocate it
no.
that way, but your concern is the way the language is written.
Yes, the fact that it says may, you can to me, you can count on the fact that there isn't going to be any extra money, number 1. Number 2, though, if Amendment 4, which is on the fireworks, specifically says shall, all right? That's where the difference is. That says they shall go to a special fund. That means they have to put the money there for that purpose. And so when they write it, they spend a lot of time writing these bills. They would not put the word may in unless they wanted the ability to not put it there, is my opinion. And if you look at other bills and where the money goes, that's exactly what happens. When it says may, they use it for other things. And plus, do we really need a constitutional amendment to control how the legislature spends money? If this purpose is so good and needed, why can't we trust the legislature then to fund it without a constitutional amendment requiring it?
I don't know that I mean, actually, I'm not going to say I understand, because I'm not advocating one way or the other, and I didn't yesterday and I won't today.
Well, I am.
Well, I know you are. I know you are. But I understood that. You made that clear. You made that clear when you called yesterday.
Yes,
but I'm going to say I see the interest in 1 and 3.
Wait a minute,
but number 2.
Wait a minute, are you saying then that you think that we need a constitutional amendment to control how the legislature spends money on anything?
No. I'm just saying.
Serious.
This particular one, number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite understand why they just couldn't pass a law and say, well, we're going to put this there. We're going to do this.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Why do they need to pass a law?
Well,
they're already if they want to fund if they want to fund a program to help the victims of sexual predators, they can do that. They don't need us to make a pool And so it makes you wonder, why are they go into this trouble? It just gives them more money over here that they may or may not use for that, but it takes it out of the general budget. They've put this money over here and that they can now use on whatever. It's another fund of money that they can dole out as favors to those counties and those legislators that do what they want them to do.
So you think it's, in a roundabout way, it's a revenue source that could obviously play on the emotions of the people under the guise of helping somebody in distress, but they have a revenue source that
Yes.
they may do what they want with.
Right. In other words, I totally have sympathy for victims of sexual
Right,
predators.
so if you go in and pull the
And-
lever, you have sympathy, but you're not going to check the next day and see.
But I don't want to give
if-
more power to the government under the guise of it's like they're taking this money from us that they may or may not use for that. Okay?
Well, I know
if they
Phil-
really wanted to use it for that, it would have said shall, period.
I
So
know-
don't vote for anything that says may.
Number two on the ballot is authorizes penalties for sexual exploitation and assessment on adult entertainment to fund child victim services. Phil Kent on the Georgia Gang Sunday has been waiting for I don't know how long to get to use his little corny joke and call this a poll tax. So
Okay.
that's what he did. Let's move along
right.
with short time. Let's go from number two to
Let's go
where
to
you
number
wanna-
4. We can
Let's
get
go
it
to
out of the
4.
way because it's the same type of thing.
Dedicates revenue from existing taxes on fireworks to trauma care, fire services, and public safety. You say vote no on this also?
Yes, because first of all, it's the amendment on the ballot says existing sales tax collected. But if you go in and read the text of the actual bill, it says the excise tax, okay, not sales tax, all right? And that's the tax that the vendors selling fireworks pay, that they may or may not pass on to the buyer of fireworks, all right? So it's the excise tax. If they pass it on to the buyer of the fireworks, your sales receipt has to show sales tax and the excise tax, all right?
Correct.
So it's the excise tax, and it shall go into a fund to be used for the state's trauma care, training and equipment for Georgia firefighters, and local safety purposes. So when you read that, because it doesn't bother to tell you the percentages or whatever, you think, okay, my local fire department will finally get some money for training or maybe for some fireproof gloves or whatever. What they also don't tell you is that the percentages, because only 5% of this tax, which will go for local public safety purposes, 55% to trauma care and 40% to the training. But when you get to what comes to you locally, that 5%, there's 159 counties. Try dividing this piddly little amount, by 159. How much are you going to actually see in Fannin or Gilmer or Pickens or Union counties? I mean, nothing. So it really isn't going to be helping locally. Now, the trauma care, again, do we really need a constitutional amendment to make sure this happens? I mean, is this because we cannot trust each legislature to appropriate funding for something so worthy? I mean, probably so. But when we get to the point that we have to have a constitutional amendment to appropriate a few $100,000 to make sure it happens, something's wrong with our legislature. I'm not going to disagree with you in the fact that
I'm concerned that these are constitutional amendments.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I'm not as concerned that they're issues of discussion with our state legislators, because that's what we send them down there to do, is to discuss many of these things. But to turn them into constitutional amendments.
Yes.
I mean, it's amended.
And they picked things that emotionally, I am all for trauma care. I am all for helping victims of sexual predators, all right? So they've picked things we emotionally would just say yes for. Why? why are they doing this, okay? So vote no. The legislature should be able to fund these things that are worthy and important without having a constitutional amendment. There's a red flag there.
Okay, dedicates revenue from existing taxes on fireworks to trauma care, fire services, and public safety. That's number 4. Joene says vote no. Where do you want to go next?
Well, let's go ahead and do Amendment 3 then.
All right, let's go. Constitutional Amendment 3. Constitutional Amendment 3 reforms and reestablishes the Judicial Qualifications Commission and provides for its composition, governance, and power.
Okay, well, Josh also pointed out that basically this is to abolish the Judicial Watchdog Commission. And this commission is the only reason the state of Georgia legislature didn't receive an F on ethics for our state government. Okay, we got a D because we at least had this commission. And if we abolish this, all right, the new commission will be made up of legislative appointees, all right? Our governor, the legislature, and the Speaker of the House will get to pick who's on this committee that decides whether a judge should be sanctioned or removed or whatever. And as Senator McCoon pointed out, it'll totally politicize the process. I mean, that means that they appoint these judges, and so if somebody complains against them, then if it's important to keep that judge in, then they can just pull strings. I mean, you can't have the judicial part of our state controlled by the legislature.
Your number one concern that I hear is it politicizes this commission?
And yes, in fact, those were Senator McCoon's words, and I totally agree. I mean, that's the whole point is we're taking away our semblance of law and order by doing this. We're making it a pay to play. I mean, people then can buy away any complaint filed against them.
Well, then why would you think, and this is something I asked Senator yesterday, I'll ask you, and we're going to continue to work on these. So if you would like to get in the discussion, it's not election day. I know some of you are doing early voting, but you can tell your friends that we're here at fyntv.com, fetchyournews.com. We're working hard to get a lot of information all the way around this subject. Maybe you agree with this amendment, and we want to hear from you. So why do you think they feel it's important? What do you think brought this to light? Why is it so important to dismantle this, put a new one in place, say to the citizens of Georgia, this is a constitutional issue, it needs fixed, and this is the correct way? I mean, what brought this?
Well, it's my understanding that the Speaker of the House said that either until this was passed, certain other things weren't going to come to the floor. And so it may not have been important to a lot of legislators, or they didn't pay attention to how serious and significant this is. But this is something, this kind of a bill is something you would expect from a legislature controlled by Democrats. Okay, now of course a fairly large percentage of our older Republicans were raised as Democrats, and you know what Aristotle said, you give me a kid to age 7 and I'll have them for life. So maybe we have a lot of Republicans that are really Democrats at heart, but this is the kind of thing that a Democratic legislature would put forth, not a Republican one. And for the legislature to want to control the Judicial Watchdog Commission is, I find it very offensive that they would even have entertained the idea of inserting themselves in the middle.
Well, I will say this. I think what I got from Senator Josh McCoon yesterday is I think I got, if I remember correctly, is the senator said he was in agreement, and these are my words, just paraphrasing here, but he was in agreement, and I know you listened to the interview, he was in agreement with
It's something needed to be
Yes,
done.
an overhaul here, but
Yes,
this was
but
not
this
the
was
route.
not the way to do it. Right, they should have had, there
So
was
he's
no
willing to
committee.
sit down and.
Right, they
Right.
didn't, normally they do a study committee and they get, input and they come up with something to be done. This was just thrown out there and said, do this, and
Well, there's a
without
lot
the
of,
study.
and I'm going to just jump out here, and I'm not looking for who likes it and doesn't like it in a lot of my conversations, but there's a lot of friction in the bar association. There's a lot of friction with some of the judges. There's a lot of friction with several in the bar and several in the legislative branches that the JQC really. See, I don't know if it's a constitutional amendment, and I don't know that this is the correct way to do it, so I'm not going to go down that road. But I do think the JQC is something that it needs scrapped, not for good, but the current form of the JQC, and I'm not going after Lester Holt, nobody am I going after, but the way it is, it needs scrapped and built back up.
They need to do something, but they don't need to make it come under the control of the legislature where they pick the people that make the decision.
I'm not making it sound like all the people that's been in the JQC, the investigators, the head of the JQC. I'm not implying that they were doing anything wrong. I'm just saying, when I say scrapped, I'm saying it just needs. And Senator McCoon agreed yesterday that this needed rebuilt, but this wasn't the.
But we definitely don't want to abolish the Judicial Watchdog Commission.
Okay, I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. You're watching FYN TV. My guest, Joene Deplancke, we're talking about the Georgia constitutional amendments that you have on the ballot. There's 4 of them. We're going to take a brief break, regroup, and spend the rest of our time talking about number 1. And I'll leave you with this. Provides greater flexibility and state accountability to fix failing schools through increasing community involvement. Boy, that sounds awful good, but we'll venture into that after these messages. Take us to break, Cole. I'll get you some popcorn.
What you gonna do with all that junk?
Hello, my name is Chad Watkins. I'm the manager at Larry's Body Shop. We are a family-owned and operated business and have been serving the North Georgia area since 1978. We are located at 1216 Progress Road in LOJ, Georgia. Our shop specializes in collision repair and we work with all major insurance companies. Larry's Body Shop is ICAR Gold, the highest role of training recognized by the collision repair industry. It is estimated that only 10% of collision shops meet these standards. Our shop consists of state-of-the-art equipment such as laser measurement system, down-drive spray booth, spot and MIG welding equipment. All of our paints are mixed on-site so that we can guarantee your paint to match every time. I know that having an accident can be a stressful event. We take pride in making sure our customers are satisfied with the repair of their vehicles. Our waiting area is clean and comfortable with free Wi-Fi and refreshing beverages. So if you're in an accident, stop by and see us at Larry's Body Shop.
And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. You're watching FYN TV. It's that simple. Folks, if you have been wondering what those 4 constitutional amendments in the state of Georgia, what they are on your ballot, we're discussing that. We discussed it yesterday. You can find that on our YouTube channel. Go to FetcherNews.com, top right-hand corner, and you'll see the YouTube symbol, and you can find it on Fetcher News. But yesterday we talked to State Senator Josh McCoon. Today we have with us Joene Deplancke, and she is discussing these 4 amendments. We've talked about 2, 3, and 4, and we saved number 1. Now, my issue as your host here, and she's going to get into the details of the amendment, but my issue for me is I think the votes are so serious. I mean, I think when you go vote, it's like one of the most serious things you could do. And to be an informed voter. And what I don't like, and I'm not taking our governor to task, but I do not like a constitution being changed with one sentence that gives the power of appointment to a governor, the power to create a committee, the power to allocate funds. I mean, the power is enormous with one sentence. So I will read that and I will give Ms. Deplancke the opportunity to start giving you the details of what she thinks. When you go in the ballot box, how could this sound wrong? It's helping children. I mean, how could anything about this be bad? Everybody wants to help the kids. Provides greater flexibility and state accountability to fix, obviously, you want to, failing schools through increasing community involvement. Well, how could that be bad? Then the actual Senate resolution number 287 that you're voting on, one sentence. Shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended to allow the state to intervene? Intervene's not bad, right? In chronically failing public schools in order to improve student performance. If you just walked into the ballot box and read this, you're thinking, why, sure, I can't go against that. What say you? Your turn.
Well, and that does sound really good, except that they're going to improve the failing schools.
All right, you said vote no, because when we started this morning, you said vote no on all 4.
Vote no. Absolutely vote no.
Now, tell me this one, why you say vote no.
Okay.
Give the viewers some details.
Well, first of all, most of the legislators in those failing districts are opposed to this. I went and looked at the nay votes, and a lot of them are in the areas that have the failing schools. Second, the Senate has totally opposed this on every vote until the very last one. I'd love to know what sweetened the pot to get them to flip, because it went exactly opposite. It was 16 yes, 38 no, and it totally swapped on the last vote. So something happened that made the difference, and I haven't had time to read what the bill was before. Right.
Kind of thing that make you go,
Also, the teachers are opposed to this. And a lot of counties, their Board of Educations have done a resolution.
I think as many as 40.
Have opposed this. The teachers union is opposed. I mean, they and the governor usually are totally lockstep, so that should make a person wonder. But most schools fail for 2 reasons. One, lack of parental involvement, and poor teachers. And parents, if you look at the parent part first, they're more likely in these poor areas to be undereducated and therefore probably put less value on education per se. But the parents, for the most part, in these poor areas, because they have most of the time less education, they feel intimidated trying to approach the school. And so what I'd like to know is what effort has been made to provide basic like instruction sheets when children are registered for school, something that tells these parents things they could do that would help their child be more prepared for school. but also a questionnaire asking if they have the following resources available. Do they have internet? Do they have computers? Do they have someone to help with homework? I mean, if you had some idea what these children have at home, it'd be easier for that jurisdiction to provide more assistance at home. But also, what effort has been made to have an informal meeting with the parents by grade level in the evening, something like a spaghetti dinner or something, where fundamental teaching aids are shown and given some ideas of how they can help the children, or let them know that there are volunteer tutors or tutors that will Skype with their children, you know, because all these people have cell phones, you know, I mean, everybody's got cell phones these days, so they have some access to the internet. But if you've ever, all these school boards are run by the Roberts Rules of Law, of Order. And if you've ever tried to communicate in one of these, and I have done that, first of all, I should probably add, my children were raised in the City of Atlanta schools, so I'm very familiar with the failing school system, all right? That's where my children went to school through high school, except for my younger one that I finally realized that he was totally failing, and I paid for him to go to Riverside Military Academy. But I know what it's like to try to get something done and to deal with teachers that don't even know the subject matter. All right, and I should say that I'm not knocking teachers. Most teachers are extremely dedicated and hardworking, and they go above and beyond, and they put in a lot of extra hours to help their students. But in many of the poor areas in Georgia, there are teachers that are tenured, that cannot pass the tests that the children are given for that part. There have been studies on it. There was a big expose on a couple of years ago about how many teachers in Georgia cannot pass the test that they give the children. And yet they still work for us. They still are out there teaching our children. This amendment, though, will not help.
That's what I was, I mean, I understood your groundwork, and it was great laying the groundwork. What's wrong with the amendment? Because you just told me there are failing schools, and you just talked about the problems that what do they do?
Okay. This new, I'm going to call it a czar, okay? This new superintendent, the OSD superintendent that they're going to appoint, to me that's this czar, that they're going to give this a whole staff and department and a pool of money to, all right? But this person is not authorized to waive any federal, state, and local rules, including the state accountability requirements, including but not limited to teacher and leader evaluation. So this person cannot change how these teachers are advised, are evaluated, all right, and cannot fire them. But can fire, how you like this? This person can fire the principal in the failing school. Well, the principal is probably failing because that principal also can't fire teachers that aren't, you know, right, meeting the goals. And so it's, that's number one. Number two, this on page 7, all right, of this new law, the real kicker is there's going to be a 3% charge for administration of this czar and his or her staff and the cost of administering this new level of bureaucracy. 3% of this money that would have been going to these failing school areas that could have been used for computers and books and teacher bonuses, or how about after-school tutors and paying for a bus to get the kids home. See, one of the reasons the kids can't stay after school is, then how do they get home? Well, if we had a little bit more money, we could have a 5 o'clock bus.
You know what, I have to say this, I don't want to waste our time, but I did not realize there wasn't no such thing as the late bus anymore. Because when I was a kid in high school, there was the late bus. If you had to stay after any athletics, any tutoring, anything you had to stay after for, there was what we called the late bus.
Well, believe me, this 3%
I'm sorry,
for
I
all
didn't mean
these
to get
counties,
sidetracked, but I didn't
all right,
realize
could
that.
pay for a late bus so the kids could stay.
It needs to be fixed, but a constitutional amendment, when you fix your constitution, or amend your constitution, Here's what a caller told me yesterday. A caller said yesterday that they did not like the way Senator McCoon said, we've got to try something. And the caller particularly said, although I like the senator, I did not like we've got to try something. Trying something is a constitutional amendment. You don't try something by making it a constitutional amendment.
Yes.
That was the issue there. So what say you? What are some of the other issues?
Well,
with
that was
this particular one.
Well, that was I also had commented on that. When he said that we needed to try something, I mean, a constitutional amendment to try something, you then will need a constitutional amendment to undo it. Therefore, it'll probably never happen. So this huge pool of money and this new department that's going to be now funded, all right, instead of using the money for some of these things that I just mentioned, I mean, the 3% charge would pay for your late school bus and tutors. All right, that would help. You should at least
Why do you
try
think the
that.
governor? Why do you think the governor? This is his signature piece of legislation that he wants. Why do you think he wants this? Why do you think there's such strong opposition? They can actually take over, is my understanding. I use the word takeover, but they can intervene and take over 100 schools at one time. Is
Yes,
that
well,
understanding?
20 a year, but
a year.
once they take your school, they have it for a minimum of 5 years. They can keep it for 10 years. They can close the school, all right? So they have a tremendous amount of power.
But they still, while they have your school, they collect your school tax, your property
Yes.
tax, on that, and you have no say over your school.
Exactly.
Is that right?
And now, I mean, at least now, if, of course, we go back to this Robert's Rules of Order, which is the main thing that I think is wrong with that. There needs to be a sense of order. But our boards of education, they want parent involvement. I want to just explain what I've gone through, because I used to go to every single Board of Education meeting in this county, and I would stand up every single time and say the exact same thing. Why can't we speak at the work sessions and ask questions of the things that are going on? And you're not allowed to speak at the work sessions, and you can't participate. And you can only participate at the full board meeting, but then only if you put your name on the agenda. It used to be the day before, now it's by 9 a.m. of the day of the meeting that you want to speak. I want to know, how does any parent know they want to speak till they come to the meeting and hear what they have to say?
So
All
if
right.
you want the failing schools to have some corrections, there's other corrections that need done first.
Well, if you want the parents to
get
participate,
involved, they need to feel they're welcome to involve.
yes, and so if they say something that they're going to do something, or they're going to have some program or whatever, and you're in the audience and you want to speak, you can't speak because you didn't put your name on the list the day before or the morning of, all right? And so there isn't any interaction. They don't encourage, they absolutely discourage. They do not want parents to speak at these meetings, and they make it very difficult for them to speak. And then they say that there's no parental involvement. And like I used to say to our board chairman back then, was when they kept saying, Ms. Deplancke, if anyone else cared, they'd be here. You're the only one that says anything. I was the only parent that ever attended these meetings at that time, and I didn't have any kids in the system. But I would stand up and say, why would any person bother to, when they've got homework to do and volleyball games to take them to or whatever, why would they come all the way down here and sit at these meetings when they're not allowed to speak? I mean, they've got better things to do with their life. There's no way to interact at these Board of Education
I think
meetings.
involvement, I went to many of them. I think involvement, so if you're going to take on a constitutional challenge for failing schools, we agree there are failing schools.
Yes.
We agree we have serious problems
Yes.
in the schools. But if you're going to take on the parental involvement issue, maybe you need to look a little closer and seeing that the parental involvement maybe has been pushed away.
You need less bureaucracy, and all this is doing is creating another level of bureaucracy away from the community people, the parents, and everything else. You're now inserting the government in there, and right now, by the way, our schools are controlled by the state and federal government to begin with. Every penny that we're given, there's a string tied to it. So they already run these failing schools. They
Well, that's right, and I'm going to just say this. I spoke to a superintendent of school the other day concerning this subject that is retiring next year, and we talked about his retirement. And I said, well, when you retire, do you think you're going to be able to speak any longer without using acronyms? How long is it going to take you to heal from? I mean, I'm just telling you, if you are a parent and you went for the first time and you said at a Board of Education meeting, and I think you and I are going to agree, we're not knocking our local boards. Yes, there's some
No.
people on there that from time to time, I'm just saying, but we're
Right.
not really taking them to task. We're taking how they operate based on, they better operate that way, or somebody's prepared to come in and say,
Yes.
oh, no, you operate this way.
If they let you talk
So we're not
from the
taking them to
floor,
task.
right? They are told once they're elected, this is how they have to run the meetings. If they let us talk from the floor, they can be
Okay.
sanctioned. The sacks will come down on them because they don't have control of the meeting. When all you're trying to do is ask a question,
Parental involvement.
it's like the Gestapo is running it. And since I'm not going to be able to stay much longer, I do have one other message.
Yeah, I wanted to give you the last word here before you have to run.
Okay, and that is go vote. We need 80% of the people in North Georgia to vote, not our typical 36%. That is the only way to combat the votes in the large cities. If you care about this election, whether it's the presidential or any of the local ones, and also when people are on the ballot uncontested, please vote for them anyway. I know that if I spent my time running for office, I'd be really discouraged that I only got 300 votes when there were 3,000 votes for the president or something. It would be like you didn't want me, you wanted the president. So vote for the people. But if you do not know the people running for a particular office and you know nothing about the office, leave it blank. Don't just pick a name. I mean, you could be voting for the absolute wrong person. So if you know nothing about something, then just leave that one blank. But we need everyone to get out and vote no on the 4 constitutional amendments.
Vote no on the 4 constitutional amendments. Do you have a different view? Do you see it a different way? Or do you have more to add to this conversation? Get in touch with me, chief@fetchernews.com, 706-889-9700. We want to thank Miss Joene Deplancke for being here today, and also we want to thank Senator Josh McCoon yesterday. And our goal here, as always, FetcherNews.com, is get you, the voter, the most information so when you go in the polls. We'll be back right after this message. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.